and then you sat at home 3 hours later going, what was that idea that I had in my head?
Something about a fish. Feedback's, I think, one of the most important stages to do, and you want to do it in multiple places throughout the process, I would say.
A recce could save your arse on the day.
So getting people on board, bringing them with you, isn't just invaluable, I think.
That was so passive-aggressive.
The context and the actual film dictates how much you need to spend. If this is your first film, definitely overschedule, because things will take a lot longer than you think. You can make a film at any sort of level. As long as you've got a camera and a bit of sound kit, then just go for it. Huzzah!
Welcome back to episode 5 now of It's Take Two, the podcast with me, Jordan Lee.
Me, Rob Worsley. I thought you were nodding to me to say it. It's fine.
You did well.
Thanks.
This podcast, how do you think this podcast's going so far?
Content-wise, it's improving. It's picking up.
Yeah, I liked episode 4.
Release schedule-wise, it took a bit of a sharp tank, hadn't it, really?
Yeah. We do apologise. We started out with the podcast with the intention for, was it every week?
Well, at one point we said every week, and then we said, oh no, we can't do that, but we'll do 2 weeks. Yeah, we'll better do that.
Now it's every 2 months.
Yeah, bi-monthly now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while, so we do apologise for that, don't we?
For all the avid listeners.
Yeah, it's been waiting, refreshing the Spotify stream, waiting for episode 5 to show up. But here we are. This podcast is, for anyone who's new to it or needs reminding because it's been so long, this podcast is all things filmmaking, isn't it, really? Whether you're a freelancer, whether you're wanting to get into film, whether you're already working in the film but you just want to listen to two people talk about film for half an hour.
Yeah, it could be all sorts, really, couldn't it?
So what are we talking about this week, Rob?
So we're in...
I hesitated on whether to say your name or not, and it was just a bit too late.
That was so passive-aggressive. Well, Jordan. I knew this wasn't going to go well.
Yeah. So what's episode 5 going to be about?
Well, we're planning our next film now, aren't we? Which is going to be shooting kind of November, December next year, so 2023. Working on the synopsis for the past few months, trying to get that right. And planning dates and locations and things like that. So we figured it'd be interesting to talk about that, but from the perspective of if you're doing your first short film, what sort of stuff do you need to look at? What do you need sorted before you shoot? So what was your first short film? What was your first kind of project?
Final year at college, the whole group got together, we made a short film. I think the whole second half of the year was all about planning it, and we all had our own role, and I got given the role of DOP. Yeah. I think they were making extra roles because we were a big group, so we had a DOP and a cam op and a secondary cam op, and because we had the bigger group out of the two classes. We ended up watching that in Cineworld.
Wow.
So I was like, we rented the screen, rented a room out, but that was a cool little moment, and I think that might have been when it was like, oh, this is like, I could do, I want to do this.
Is that what you won your cinematography award for?
I don't want to brag.
Yeah.
Have
you got the trophy anyway that we could bring it up?
I think I sold it it got a lot for it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
What was your first short film?
So I think the first thing I probably did was a fake news broadcast where we were kind of reading the news, and we did little news pieces where we went out on scene and stuff, and that was quite fun. There's some like creativity in it. It's quite funny. Like we're walking through in casual clothes, go behind a pillar, and then we come out and we've got suits on and stuff like that. Nice, yeah. I bet no one knows how we did that. We flashed up, like we did subliminal messaging. We said distinction, like halfway through.
No, you did.
Yeah, we did.
Did you?
Yeah, we did. It worked. We got a distinction. Yeah, we just flashed it up because we cut to a title of headlines or something like that. So just for one frame before, we just wrote distinction, and it must have worked. So obviously we met when we were shooting corporate and things.
Yeah.
But it was quite quick into that we started working on shorts together. Mm-hmm. Old Habits with Ollie was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Because that was like 2015, maybe 2014.
I can always remember you asking me to help out, and you'd be like, oh, can you just focus, Paul? I'd be like, yeah, sure. I've never focused porn in my life, didn't know what to do, and I was a bit nervous because it's different, isn't it? When you're holding a camera,
oh, it's well different, yeah.
You know that if you're moving forward, you need to need to change the focus plane. But doing that as a sole job, because we were doing all the corporate stuff for day to day, weren't we? And then any chance to kind of delve into something else, especially something we want to do as in the long term in careers, I was like, I'll do it. And that's when I met Ollie and a lot of others. I'd not been up in Leeds long as well, so that was like my introduction to friends.
Derby originally, wasn't it?
Yeah, Derby. But I can remember being nervous.
What, for the shoot?
Yeah. Oh, we used to be sat next to each other at work, didn't we? You had your GH4 at the time, and you were talking about the metabones and how the crop factor changes with that compared to the 2x crop.
You were so bored, and you just thought I was this fucking nerd.
I didn't have a clue what you were on about. All I knew was, let's make an image look all right, from uni at that point. And then the learning curve after uni, which we might talk about in a future episode, was like astronomical. But you knew about synthesizers, what the crop factors were, what the focal lengths would be and stuff like that. I didn't know any of that when I left uni.
So you just bullshitting me then?
I was just nodding and agreeing with you. Be like, oh yeah, 2x crop, yeah. And I didn't have a clue. I went home and I was Googling that. So then I'd go about the morning after like, oh, is that the Metabones Ultra or the XL?
That's like that bit on The Office with Steve Carell, isn't it?
Which bit?
Oh, is it the UK office? He's talking to the intern about like quiz shows and stuff, and I think the intern mentions like War and Peace and things like that, and he just kind of stifles off and then comes back a bit later and he's like, oh, you mean the kind of 1776 novel? Yeah, I know about that, yeah. That
helped me learn a lot more stuff that is actually really important to know that you might not learn at uni, because
that's the tricky thing with uni, and there's so much to learn in specific areas that sensor size and 10-bit, 8-bit, things like that. There's only an interest in that if you're going to go into cameras and things like that. If you're at uni for a general course and you're probably going to end up doing production design, who cares about sensor size and who cares about 10-bit versus 8-bit? It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
But we should do an episode on university and whether it's worth it or whether it's just best to go out into the world or what.
Yeah. So Old Habits was the first short we did. And how many would you say we've done since then? Excluding the features, short film.
We've not done loads, to be fair. 3 or 4 since then.
But we've learnt a lot in those shorts, and then we learnt a heck of a lot in the feature Among Living, the one that we're just finishing.
Yeah.
And now we're moving on to this third feature. We're in the process of planning it. So we thought this episode can be what we've learned leading up to today, what we're going to take forwards with us while we're planning the rest of this next film, what we've learned that we might not have done in previous films. So shall we start right from the beginning of...
Yeah, so let's say you've never done a short film before. You've got an idea. What steps do you take? Where do you go? Who do you chat to?
Yeah.
What's your first move, do you think?
When I get an idea, I'll either write it in my phone, or if I've got a pen and paper, whatever, wherever I am, I'll write it down, because the amount of times I've thought of something, and I'll be like, oh, I'll remember that for when I get in. And then you sat at home 3 hours later going, what was that idea that I had in my head?
Something about a fish.
It would have made me a millionaire and I forgot it. Yeah. I've done it wrong in the past. I think I've gone straight to script.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not necessarily the best way.
I was just laughing then, sorry. I was like, this is so basic. Right? You write a note down as your idea. Like, Jesus Christ, we're going to be in 6 hours.
So I log into my Windows PC, I open Celtex.
Start, type my password.
Sometimes I've gone wrong in the past where I've just opened Celtex and started the script straight away.
Some people work well like that, though. And this is a disclaimer we should put out, is that this is how we would work it. And some people don't. I was watching an interview with Martin McDonagh, who's done In Bruges and 3 Billboards and great films like that, Oscar winning. But he was saying he doesn't know the ending of his film when he starts writing. He knows the characters and he just starts writing and sees what happens.
Features?
Yeah. It's just crazy, isn't it? But his films are amazing.
Yeah.
But then you look at Chris Nolan, who plans to different timelines out and things like that, and I don't think you could make a film like Tenet or Inception without knowing the ending.
Yeah.
Everyone works differently. So a little disclaimer that this will be how we like to do it.
Yeah.
You might listen to this and think it's absolute nonsense.
Would you say synopsis first or a treatment?
So I think for a short film, definitely a synopsis. And once you've written that, get feedback on it. And feedback's, I think, one of the most important stages to do. And you want to do it in multiple places throughout the process, I would say.
How much do you listen to other people's feedback? Because obviously you have an idea in your head and there's, you'll be open to a certain amount of alternative suggestions, but obviously some suggestions could potentially change the narrative or the character or whatever. How much do you listen to that and implement it?
Yeah.
It's got to be a good balance, hasn't it? To stick to your guns of why you made that short film, which is another thing we'll go on to in a minute.
Yeah.
But then also, sticking to your guns, but also making sure that the short film or feature film, any type of film that you make, is going to entice other people.
It's really hard, and you've got to stick to your gut. I think for me, when I get feedback, and I think the brutal feedback is the most useful, because if I send stuff out to me mum and she says, "Oh, it's incredible," it's not going to help you, is it? Yeah. Everyone's the same. People giving you brutal feedback is more useful, and so what I do is I'll get it in, I'll read it, probably get annoyed and gutted, and just think they don't know what I'm doing here. Yeah. They don't understand it. Let's put it down for a day, 2 days, and then come back to it, and then read it again, and you start to realise, all right, they've got fair points here.
Yeah.
It's got to stay in line with what you want to do, because also the idea and the film that you want to do, other people would tell it in different ways, and it would show it in different ways. So it's working out why are they giving you the feedback. Because if I give a bit of feedback that says, this doesn't work, you should do such and such, that's my idea, that's how I would do it, but it might not be the way you want to do it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll read feedback and think, I'm not going to take their idea, but it's interesting that they say it needs something new there.
Yeah.
And then I can implement what I would do.
When it comes to getting that crew together, what type of people should people be looking for?
Depends on the project, really, doesn't it? Mm. Depends on the scale of it, where you're at. Like if we're doing it today as though it's our first short film, you want people of the same level then, really, or slightly better. Mm-hmm. Because you can't go out and ask Roger Deakins to help you. I think it's...
Is that why he's not on the podcast?
Yeah, it's why he's not showed up, that we were going to have him today.
Well, I've got a lamp.
yeah. Finding people, like Facebook groups are useful, aren't they? And putting calls out and stuff like that. And I think the key thing is try and get people who you're going to gel with. Sometimes that's hard to know if you're not meeting them and stuff before. If it's just a low budget short film, it might be a case of you just meet them on the day. But make sure people are on the same wavelength as what you're doing. If you're having to do it unpaid and stuff, then you want people who are going to benefit from it. If you're looking for a DP, maybe get someone on who they haven't DP'd a short yet. They've just been doing corporate or something like that. Something where they can step up and improve, find showreel materials, stuff like that. And I think that they're the people to look for in that situation.
Shout out?
The shout out, yeah.
Okay, who are we doing it to this week?
We're going to do it to you.
Olive. Mm-hmm. We're going to shout out to Ollie this week, aren't we?
Oliver Mitchell. Oh, we do the clap at the end.
No, we'll do it now.
I've missed it.
Join, come on. Thank you. Oliver Mitchell is a man who's recently bought a house in the local area.
The UK listeners will get that reference out.
Yeah.
Ollie's a mate of ours. He's a film director as well.
Yeah.
He's currently in production on a feature film, which we're shooting with him.
Yeah.
We've got 1 day left.
Mm-hmm. He also owns a business as well, which I think would be really handy for listeners to hear more about, how he's started it, how he's developed it, and is at the position where this year he went full-time owning that business. Hopefully we'll get Ollie on soon within the next few episodes, because it'd be great to hear from him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's get him on.
Yeah, so cheers to Ol.
Are we going to say what business?
You've run out of drink.
I know.
To Oliver.
Cheers. Huzzah. So you've got a script, you've got a synopsis, you started to put crew together. What's next?
Locations is obviously key, isn't it? And I think making the move, if you've been to university and you're now making short films in your own time, there's a shift, isn't there, from using like your student housing that's probably got the same coloured walls as this house, but
and your uni corridors.
Yeah, from a production value, we've spoken in the past that how important location is.
Yeah.
When it's not because you've been told to by your university to make a short film, when it means something and you could get something out of this, whether it's professional development or being selected for festivals, right down to locations, you've got to think about what's going to make this film better, which is why recce's are so important. And you get taught that at college, you get taught at uni, but, and we didn't properly, we'd looked on Airbnb and gone, yeah, that looks good. Yeah, we can shoot in that kitchen. And that's fine. You turn up on the day. So we've got one plug in the kitchen because we can't take that out or that out. Shit, that's happened. And
what's your process then when you go on for a recce? We've just been up to some for the next film. What's going through your mind as DP? What are you thinking?
Well, I'll take a camera with me, and as long as if you're a DP and not a director, you need to make sure you know what's going on. So when you're talking about, when this scene happens, I know what you're talking about there. That's important to know, enough of the synopsis if that's the stage the film's at the moment. But take a camera and just have a look and see, not too much, because we're going to do it in the way of, we went to check the location out, didn't we, recently? But then we're going to hopefully go again and start blocking it out in more detail and nailing down, right, this scene could take place here. Let's get some reference frames. Let's think about how we can light it. Recce's are crucial. And then, I know some people are itching to go straight into filming it. They want to film it, they want to see it in the edit and, get it done as soon as. But a recce could save your arse on the day of shooting if you've just been there. Just spend half a day, go and visit it, check the places out, because then you can turn up on the day. And for me, it helps knowing that I've already been in that room, so I know what you're talking about. But when I'm there, you can leave me to it. I can tell whoever's helping out on lighting and camera what we can be doing. Whereas with Lakeside, I hadn't been to the cabin before, or there was different locations. I was relying on you a little bit to be like, so where do you want, where are you shooting from? I'd rather know that now, from learning from that. I'd rather know without having to ask you anymore. And I think that's an important thing of a DP and director.
Yeah, that's the aim, isn't it?
And that works on any level, whether it's a short film, whether it's a feature, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you're a DP, go on the recce with the directors or producers.
That's what worked well about that recce we've just done, because there was me as director, there was you as DP, and then we had Kate as producer. We were all looking at that place through different... You all right?
I'm sorry. I realised when I take a sip, I can't see you for a split second.
Yeah, I realised that as well. Yeah.
Sorry.
Next time we do it, I'm going to dump down.
Where'd you go?
Fucking hell. So there was me as director, you as DP, Kate as producer. We were all looking at that location from a different perspective. You were looking at it from a camera lighting point of view. Where we're going to be able to light these scenes from? Can we do day for night? Things like that. If we're on second or third floors, we'd have the facilities to be putting flags up outside.
Yeah.
I was looking at it from a blocking point of view and style point of view. Do the scenes that I've written and imagine, do they fit here? And then Kate's thinking totally logistics. And also, on Among the Living, the kitchen was kind of in where we were shooting. That was an absolute nightmare, having to clear it. With this
Sometimes the edges of the frame would have been like a ladle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a big bag of pasta just next to it. And whereas with this one, we're not shooting in the kitchen, so it's ideal that I can just be a crew room just for food. Getting crew members like that on board early and taking them with you on these places, because if you're writing and directing it and you this is your first one, chances are you're not going to be thinking of the logistics or the lighting of it. And, is there enough plugs? Are we going to be able to put lights up here? So getting people on board, bringing them with you, isn't just invaluable, I think.
Which definitely goes back to that ownership of your film. When, if you come up with an idea, you want to direct it, you might want to shoot it, you might want to plan it. If you try and do all those things, regardless of the scale of that project, you're likely to miss something that could be quite crucial in terms of making that film, even if it's right down to the logistical side of planning. So that's why it's so valuable to get people on board to make sure that your role and what you're doing is you can put 100% into that one role.
I think that's one of the hardest things to do, is to trust other people and pass that stuff off. Coming from uni where I was DP to directing shorts outside of uni, it was hard to give that visual control up until I found the right person. Please cut that out.
Oh, definitely going in. Budget is the dreaded word for a lot of people who want to make short film and hasn't either got much money to spend or they just want to make something.
Well, it's the one practical thing that stops you doing it, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got all of the emotional side of it of not being ready and imposter syndrome and stuff like that, but the kind of one real thing that stops you is money.
From a budget perspective then, there are certain things that you're going to have to pay for any project regardless.
Yeah.
Shall we rattle through those and then move on to the optional things that...
Yeah, so what's the minimum spend you can do a short film for?
Mm-hmm. Your film, Red Light.
Our film, Red Light, Jordan.
Our short film, Red Light. That's a good one to talk about from a budget perspective, isn't it? Because it didn't cost that much. Did we shoot it in one day?
Yeah, one day.
Shot it in a day.
Yeah.
Nice shoot to be on.
Yeah, lovely shoot.
So if anyone wants to give it a watch, feel free to watch that.
Pause us now. In a minute, not now.
Oh, sorry. I was doing Bernard's watch.
But they're gonna... Bernard's watch? Pause it, watch it. How much do you think it was made for? And then come back. So pause it. Ready now. Now they're back. How was it?
It's great.
Enjoy
Loved it. Yeah, yeah.
No, we didn't watch it. And just made it up.
So what was the budget for Red Light?
I think £80 to do the shoot. So that budget was literally travel and food. Pizza and a buffet. I don't know. Yeah, like you say, we shot it in a day. Did all the dialogue stuff first. Went out to shoot daytime stuff. Did some more dialogue and then went out to shoot the evening stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it was sorted with score and everything within a few months. It was a really nice, easy, short project. Mm-hmm. People volunteered their time for it because it was either friends like yourself who were into filmmaking, wanting to do something else. That was the first time we met Kaylee, our makeup artist, who we've worked with since.
Previous shout out?
I think that's the cheapest probably, from about 80 quid, and then up to other short films that have cost a few grand. So you could say, you know, why do a film for 80 quid and why spend thousands on another? Red Light, you know, we were shooting in our house. We had a car in it. It's like, do you spend money hiring a car in that suits perfectly for it? We'll just use one we've got for nothing. We'll just use my car for that.
Yeah.
That sort of film, it's all about the performances and the kind of setting and the context rather than production value. Whereas other films we've done where we've spent more money, we've gone out to locations, we've gone across the country to shoot at beaches, you know, we've hired costumes in and stuff like that. So I think the context and the actual film dictates how much you need to spend, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, if you're pushing this film through and it's your kind of project, then make sure no one's at least out of pocket doing it.
Yeah, you're not the only person who would gain from that film, is that everyone's there. Everyone will say yes to helping you out and being on that crew.
Yeah.
For a reason, if they think there's any gain for them to be involved.
Yeah, but you don't want them paying out their own money for it.
No.
So travel expenses, always cover that. Food, make sure you
keep them full.
Sorting food. And I think make sure the food's good as well. Because if people are working for free, then feeding them well is a key thing.
Mm-hmm. If people are volunteering and things like that, you want to keep it as short as possible. When it comes to a scheduling perspective, then obviously if people aren't getting paid, they're going to want to make sure that they get fed and just treated fairly in terms of giving up their time. But is there a balance of making sure that you get everything you need in a short amount of time filming a short film and treating your crew and cast fairly, considering that they're doing it potentially for nothing?
Part of me, if I was helping out on someone else's film, I'd rather do one long day than two short days, if that makes sense. So even if it was a kind of like 12, 14-hour day, unpaid, as long as I'm getting fed, I'd rather do that than two kind of 7-hour days because it's much less commitment then. You know, like a one-day short film for free, it's not a massive commitment. That's the sort of thing I'd love to do. But if you start looking at kind of 3-4 day for a short film, it's a lot more for someone to take on unpaid. But then obviously you don't want to have a brutal schedule where there's no time for rest and no time for breaks and you just got to rush through and get everything done.
Yeah.
Scheduling's a hard thing to get right, I think.
Obviously we've learnt a lot from the features as well, which you'd have taken from what you've learnt from the shorts. But what were the main things you learnt from a scheduling perspective? Because for anyone who's listening, you help with the scheduling with Kate, who's your wife.
Yeah, producer.
What have you learned from a scheduling perspective then? What else have you learned?
I tend to overschedule, which then becomes an accurate schedule. Because if you're there thinking, oh, we'll get this shot, it'll take us a half an hour. If you schedule an hour in, suddenly it probably does take an hour anyway. So it feels like you're over scheduling, but actually you're probably on point, unless you a few years in and you're quite experienced in knowing how long things take. But if this is your first film, definitely over schedule, because things will take a lot longer than you think, especially if you're lighting and stuff like that. But location changes, like on Lakeside, where we'd scheduled shots and things like that, and they were all in the same location. We didn't have to drive anywhere, but there was still a half an hour walk away. Didn't take that into account. So suddenly we were kind of pushed for time already. So because we'd overscheduled, we managed all right. We got through everything.
I found on pretty much every shoot that I do, whether it's freelance, commercial, corporate, or film, the day one especially, and that first morning block, I'd always factor just more time, just because it's day one and the start, because the amount of times where you've used the same timing for the rest of the shoot, you apply that to that first morning block of day one. I found myself always in positions where we're already behind and we've not even shot anything yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a little tip that I'd probably say is that first scene, the day one morning, add a bit onto what you would typically schedule for, because you are going to fall behind. Even if it's just getting the stuff out of the van, or someone from the location might not have turned up yet, and that's you're already behind, and you don't want to start any project feeling like you're behind.
So you've got the schedule, so you know what days you're shooting, but then you need to schedule those days themselves with the shots and the scenes. What's the best approach to doing that, do you think?
I got taught it at uni, and you probably did as well. The old way of starting wide, get your master shots, get the performance nailed in that wide, and then progressively move to your mids, to your close-ups, things like that. And we spoke about that in Among the Living, in that cabin scene. We took a while to get the scene nailed from a performance before we moved into those mids.
It's a good way of doing it, I think.
It is, because then even from a continuity perspective, you can be more aware of continuity.
Do you tie that in with blocking then? Because the ideal scenario is to take the actors to the actual location, block and rehearse the scene, and then as DP you can watch and you know where shots are going to be, you can look at angles and stuff.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. I mean, the best way to do it is to shoot it while you're there, just on a phone, on a spare camera, and actually see the shots. We've done that for Among the Living. We did a location recce to the mill and shot it and kind of compared it to the final product so that we know what shots we're gonna need. You can't always do that. Sometimes you've got to do it in your mind if you can't get to the location or whatever. How do you go about scheduling those shots? What do you get first? What do you prioritise? Because if say we've got a scene and we've got tracking shots in, we've got mid shots, close-ups, what do you prioritise? How do you schedule that?
To me, I think that's where me and you have to sit down and have a chat, because from a DP, like I think we've said in the past, I want to make sure that the shot's nice as possible. So if you want that really nice tracking shot, from a scheduling side, I'll fight my corner to have that time to get that shot looking as good as both me and you imagined, whilst appreciating that you're going to want to make sure that the performance is right as well. I think always start with that wide to get the scene, like we say, nailed from a performance perspective. So once you've got that coverage on the wide, you can then move in to your mids, get your close-ups, and then you just get in further coverage. Yeah. And if the scheduling didn't quite work out and you ran out of time, you've got that wide anyway in the bag. You've got the entire scene in some form.
I think that's the thing for me. It's that safety, isn't it? If once you've nailed the wide, if something happens and you can't shoot for the rest of the scene, at least you've got something to show. Whereas if you start on the close-ups and then something happens and you can't carry on shooting, you're going to have to play the whole scene on close-ups. It's not going to work. If you've got coverage of walking in or walking out or the action that happens, it's the safest way to do it, to get the wide first. The tricky thing then is deciding what's next. And for me, I would just put it in as a list of priority, like an A, B, C. A is essential. B is we kind of need that. C is if we've got the time, let's get it. And then from there, working out what's the minimal fuss to change or get the next shot. So if you're shooting in here and we've got 6 shots that look this way, get them as a bunch, try and schedule them together if you can. Because then if you've got loads of kit this side, if you've got to then move it around to shoot this way, you don't want to be doing that shot to shot to shot. Think about the logistics of moving it. And it kind of sucks for the actors because they've got to kind of work around that. but it's a lot easier for actors to jump around than it is to move all the lighting, all the crew, all the sound.
And there's ways to mitigate that as well, isn't there? Like with multicam, choosing the right times to bring in a few more cameras, get the angles, say if you're shooting in one direction. There's times when multicam, budget depending and crew depending, can help you.
We shoot multicam most of the time now for the right scene. Obviously, if there's a Steadicam scene or something like that, then we won't, because you just can't get it in. But if we can get a second camera in, we throw a second camera in.
Yeah.
And we've done it different ways. Sometimes we do it where camera A is on one person, camera B is on another, like here. And then camera C is just doing its own thing.
Yeah, just leave it to it.
And that works okay, but I think that's harder for lighting. And we've done it other times where camera A is on one person and then camera B is on the same person, but on a different shot or a tighter shot or a different angle.
Yeah.
I think I like doing it that way from a director's point of view.
Yeah.
Because you're getting coverage, but you're still only watching one performance. But it just means, you don't have to keep repeating that. Getting coverage from a lighting perspective, the lighting's pretty much fine for both. And from an actor's point of view as well, less takes that you've got to sit through to get your mid and your close.
Let's talk kit then, because that again, if you've not got access to it, if you don't already own a camera, bit of audio, bit of lighting, that can soon ramp up the budget, can't it, for people? Shall we go through some key bits of kit that's needed for a short film, just to help anyone out who might be thinking, I want to make a short film, I don't know what I need?
First thing I would get is sound kit, because most phones nowadays you can get a decent image off, but if it sounds crap, no one's going to watch it. There's loads of examples on YouTube where, like David Sandberg, Pony Smasher on YouTube, he did an example where he showed a scene from Shazam, which is his movie, showed it with bad video, great audio, and they showed it with bad audio and great video, and you take the bad video every time. So if you had a tiny amount of money to spend on kit, for me it would go in sound kit, and you would beg or borrow to get a camera or use your phone,
or reach out to a DP like say on a Facebook page who might own a camera.
But if the bare minimum is, then it's sound for me. Do you disagree?
No, I mean as a DP I'm like,
it breaks your heart. You take an Alexa over a sound recorder.
Just a set of Cine Primes.
Just do a silent film instead. Fuck it, why not? And I think sound-wise, if we're talking micro-budget here, if we're talking someone this is their first film that they want to do and they've got no kit and they're struggling to get people who do have kit, the basics would be like a boom pole, and you could get a cheap one or you could use a broom, and a shotgun mic that can go on the end, and a cable. And it's all about mic placement, getting the mic as close to them as possible.
Yeah.
If you're shooting on like a friend's DSLR or something like that and you get a Rode mic, them Rode mics are great, they're decent. Don't just put it on camera though. It's all about placement. Watch some tutorials and you can get really decent sound out of a fairly cheap mic if you put it in the right place and treat it right.
It's probably worth saying as well, we're suggesting bits of kit if you're a production-based role. If you're someone who might be listening to this, who's a writer, then for someone who's less involved in the production side and as a crew member, utilize those pages on social media to reach out to people who might own that kit already. And like we were saying earlier, if they're happy to help out, whether it's a voluntary basis, they'll only say yes if they think it's worthwhile, and they'll come with their kit because they'll want to do the best in their job because they'll think there's benefit to getting involved. So reach out to people.
I think one important thing is, and I'm not trying to put camera last, but camera probably would be last for me, because you could get a decent image out of anything nowadays. I think after sound, for me, it would be lighting, and that's not necessarily a thing of going out and buying nice lights. Think about where natural light is going to be and utilize that. If we had curtains open in a room and you haven't got any artificial light to fight that, then don't just put the actor in front of the window and look straight with the window behind them, because they're going to be totally underexposed. It's going to look rubbish. Think about your
weather
actor
changes.
placement. Yeah, and weather does change. Yeah, think about your actor placement and use that window as the key light and use it to light them. So you don't have to go out and buy expensive lights, but bear in mind that you can adjust blocking and placements to use the light that is just naturally there. What do you think as a DP here in that? It's ridiculous. Go on by
No, it's true because
just 300x.
it's tough, isn't it? Because we don't know who's listening to this yet. You know, someone could have never made a film before, and they might find that side of it really useful. Whereas others might be watching this and going, "Well, I own 3 lights. I'm using them," which is completely fair and it's understandable. But
yeah, definitely.
It's difficult to try and cater for everyone.
I mean, that's the thing, though. We have access to good sound, good camera, good lighting equipment. And we use all of it. So if you've got access to it, for sure, use it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have access to it, don't think that it will stop you from making a film, because you can make a film at any sort of level. As long as you've got a camera and a bit of sound kit, then just go for it.
So the film has been shot. We've planned it. The shoot's gone well. It's now in the edit. When it comes to editing it, chances are you might want to edit it yourself, especially if it's a low level. Not a low level, like a shit film. Mm-hmm. If it's a low budget film, you're probably going to want to edit yourself or use someone who you know closely to edit that. I guess it works on a similar level to writing the film in terms of feedback and suggestions when you're in the editing phase as well. And I know that you asked me, you know, when you're providing drafts of the films that you make, you ask for feedback. Is it just as important to get the feedback in the edit as much as it is as when you're writing it?
Definitely, yeah. Because they say that, don't they? They say you make the film 3 times: when you write it, when you shoot it, and then when you edit it. There's so much that can be done in the edit to change the film, improve it, make it worse, that I think, don't just do a draft and kind of call it finished there. First thing I would do is do your draft edit and get it to a point where you think it's really tight and really good. And then what they told us at uni, which I think is invaluable, is take your runtime and cut 10% off, because chances are it's too long and it's too indulgent. And I think that's a great kind of bit of advice.
Yeah.
Because so far, all the films I've done, that's been totally true. And you can, and don't just take 10% off the end. It's just like, I've got a climax now. I mean, just like trim shots here and there and just try and get rid of 10% of the runtime, because chances are that beautiful wide shot that you've got in, you've probably put it in for too long. Mm-hmm. Once you've done that, then send it out, and I think get as much feedback as possible. You know, what works, what doesn't work. Is it boring? Is it too long? Things like that. And I think it's just as important getting it in post as it is in pre-production, for sure.
And it's like with the script writing, give it a day or 2. Don't just try and, I mean, there's competitions that it's 24 hours, 48 hours. They're intense periods. But if you've got the time to make this film as good as you can.
Yeah, definitely sit on it and come back to it.
Yeah. If you have got the time to make it as good as you can, then leave it a few days and come back to the edit with a fresh pair of eyes, as they say.
Yeah.
And some of those suggestions that a friend might have told you, you might actually look at that and go, oh, they've got a point. As long as it makes that film better and, you know, as long as you do agree with those suggestions, then go for it. Yeah.
I think as well, similar to the actual production, spend time with the sound mix in the edit, because that's the thing that will put people off straight away. If the sound quality of the recording and then sound mix is bad, that's kind of a write-off straight away for your film. So ideally get someone in to do that, to spend time on the sound who knows what they're doing. Same for colour grading, but I think colour grading's a lot less important than the sound mix. Mm-hmm. So spend time doing it all, get someone in to do that.
We've just covered a lot. I don't know how long this episode's going to be, but we've covered a lot in terms of from start to end of making a short film. And hopefully we've not put people off making them, because there's a lot to consider. But it's worth highlighting the fact that in order to make a short film as good as it can be, there is a lot to consider. It's not just rocking up or coming up with an idea, going, yeah, we'll shoot that and then edit it, done. There's a lot more to consider that will make that film better by just spending a bit more time in pre-production, a bit more time in production, even if, you know, the schedule permits, and even a bit more time in post to make it as good as possible. So I hope that it's been useful. Do you think it has been?
It has. It's tricky, isn't it? Because we haven't even mentioned insurances, risk assessments, call sheets. There's so much to go into. So we're just, for me, it's from the perspective of a real low budget 1 or 2 day shoot with your friends. As you get into it, you need to know what call sheets, risk assessments, insurances are. And
they're good practices to have, especially the call sheets.
Yeah.
You know, if you're working with people who might be more advanced or more experienced, if they don't get a call sheet, they're going to be like, I don't know what's going on.
I think what we need to do is we'll do an episode on what you need to do a feature.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're probably at the next kind of level of planning and preparation and experience. And so we can dive in and we'll try and make it fun. We'll do some quizzes or something to do call sheets, risk assessments, insurance, all that sort of kind of dull stuff.
Yeah. We'll jazz it up a bit.
Yeah.
If you've got any questions, if you've got any topics for maybe episodes that you want us to talk about, it would be helpful, because sometimes we're sat here thinking, what should we talk about? But there is a lot to talk about, and we know there is, but we want to make sure that what we are talking about is worth your time and you'll find it valuable. So if you've got any topic suggestions, any episode suggestions, do get in touch.
Yeah, and don't worry about inundating us with messages, because we've only got 12 listeners, so we can easily fend off all of them questions and all of them comments, so don't worry. Don't not email in just because you're worried about the thousands that we get.
Yeah, your message will almost definitely get read.
You're almost 10% of our viewership, just you alone, so go for it.
But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Remember, we're on YouTube if you listen to this on Spotify, so if you'd rather see our faces, put a face to a name. Yeah. That's the right way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or vice versa, if you've had enough of seeing us talk, just listen to us on Spotify, and hopefully in the future, when I can get around to it, we'll be on other streams as well. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in about 3 months when we decide to film the next one. Cheers.
Oh, that sounded cold.